Hello everyone, welcome to another Empathy Week webinar. I'm really pleased to announce that we have Rich here with us today. Unfortunately, we had a bit of a tech problem. So Rich's cameras, for some reason, it was working before and it's not working now, but I can promise you this is what he looks like and that he is here in the room. And we're going to hear from him today about being a creative, turning a hobby into a passion, a passion and a hobby into a job, into a stable source of income. And for me, this is such an important part of Empathy Week, and such an important part of empathy is creativity and being able to see different perspectives, using empathy and creativity together, because actually they both enhance each other. And it's especially what we need in a world where we're at the moment, where things are tough, cost of living crisis, we've got wars going on across the world, we've got lots of problems to solve, and creativity is the solutions to that. And Rich picked up a camera back in 2015, I believe, and ever since then, he's been doing amazing things. Another reason why I really wanted Rich to come and speak to you all today is because he also uses social media in such a creative and good way. We often talk about social media in a negative light, about how it can be so damaging for our mental health. If you follow Rich and his work, you will not think that at all. It's really inspiring, really creative. He's worked with some of the biggest brands across the world, and I'm really excited for him to talk really honestly and openly about his journey as being a creative and how he's got to where he is now. It's not all glamorous. I'm sure he's going to tell you that himself. But for now, I'm going to pass over to Rich, and please do use the Q&A function as well to ask any questions that you may have, and Rich can answer them at the end. Rich, over to you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ed. That was a really nice introduction. Thank you. It's kind of nice that you can't see my face. It kind of makes me like a mysterious Banksy kind of character. This session is going to be a little bit about how I took a hobby which is quite niche and something that you wouldn't really think could turn into a job, and how it sort of happened. And it's quite cathartic going through this and looking back, because like a lot of things, you don't really realize how it all works until you connect the dots backwards. So yeah, let's just go straight into this. So I'm going to do, by the way, my sort of pseudonym is PaperBoyo. You can call me Rich or PaperBoyo, whatever you want. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I went from, well, basically not really having a clue what I wanted to do with my life or my hobbies or job or anything like that, and how I sort of found this hobby that became a job, and how it became a job, and what I've got to do with it, and then a few learnings I've sort of come across along the way. So, you know, a bit like a classic TED talk where there's a moment, an epiphany at the end or something. I'll try and pass on some advice. So yeah, as I say, when I started, so we're going back to like me being a teenager here, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left school. The only thing I knew, I had an inclination that I wanted to do something creative, like very vague. I didn't know what. I just liked the idea of making things and ideas and making them come to life, and certainly visual media. And when I was really young, I was really into Wallace and Gromit. And I think one of the reasons I liked Wallace and Gromit is that it felt quite basic in a way. Like you could literally see the thumbprints on the characters, and you could see that it was made by someone, and that it was, you know, handmade and man-made. And there was just something about that I really liked. It seemed almost attainable, almost like I could see how it was made, and I liked the idea of that. It wasn't something like, you know, incredible graphics in a movie where you're just like, I've got an idea where to start with that. With something like this, I sort of had an idea of where to start, or where I could start, sorry. So that's kind of like what inspired me to sort of start to think about, right, yeah, creativity in visual media and moving images and things like that. That's kind of where I wanted to start. So when I left school, I did a really generic media degree at university, and eventually ended up working in TV. And I worked on some of these shows, Peep shows, some of Darren Brown shows. There was a game show back on ITV called The Cube, and I worked on Top Gear briefly. Great shows. I worked on them on a very, very junior level, by the way. So I was like a runner. I was the guy making cups of teas and things like that. And it was cool being in this environment. Like these were big, like some of them were big shows, and there was lots of energy, and it was great to be around these people. But ultimately, I was working on other people's creative ideas. And I wasn't, making my own creative decisions, and nothing I was coming up with was actually being seen by anyone. These were all other people's ideas, and I was, as I say, at a super junior level working on them. So it kind of made me start thinking about what is it that I want to do. I really like, and I'm kind of jealous of these people who get to like create, like come up with the scripts and the ideas for these shows and go off and do them. So like I was wondering what was my thing, and making one of those shows, during one of them, I came across some paper artists, and that kind of just opened me up to this whole world of paper art, which I'd never come across before. And I started seeing artists who were doing beautiful things with just paper, and it was really new to me. I hadn't seen anything like this, and I loved the fact that it was so accessible. It was just paper. And again, going back to that Wallace and Gromit example, where it was just like plasticine, it wasn't anything too it wasn't crazy software that I needed. It was, I could do this with my hands, and I could pick up a piece of paper quite easily. So this isn't any of my work, I just need to clarify that, but it was just the fact that this inspired me, and I thought I could start to do something a bit like this. And then I went deeper and deeper, and I sort of, came across all these artists, and realized that there was actually this whole world of papercraft, which I didn't realize. And I was quite like amazed by it. And as I say, inspired, but also, if I'm honest, like super intimidated. It blew my mind what people were doing with paper, but then the fact that there were so many people doing amazing things with it, it kind of, in a way, it kind of put me off from even wanting to start doing some of my own papercraft, because I was like, these guys are doing it so much better than me. And then I came across a film called The Science of Sleep, which is a Michel Gondry film. And there was this scene in it, this specific scene here, where there's a dream sequence, and there's this cityscape made from paper and cardboard. And I thought, wow, that looks very impressive, but it also looks like something I could actually do, and I could probably like have a crack at making something like that myself. So that's what I did. I kind of started doing these little like stop motion animations and making paper sets in my bedroom when I was living back in White City in London. And this is how it kind of started for me. I was just making these paper cardboard sets. That's on top of, I had a really small bedroom. That's a desk of drawers I had, which was kind of like turned out to be my desk, and where I actually like filmed and shot it as well on top of this thing. And I didn't really have like a narrative or a concept, but I just sort of started like building things around it. And then one day I managed to one weekend actually, I managed to sneak this set into one of the small studios where I was working in the TV studios near me, and filmed like a really simple stop motion sequence there. And I really enjoyed it. And so I just sort of started to feel like I was finding a passion here, something that was really exciting me. And I had a few friends who were in bands, various music bands. So I sort of said, can I make some music videos for you guys? And they were like, yeah, sure. So then I started using the lyrics of the videos to sort of guide a narrative and build a script. And it started to like, rather than it just being a completely random sort of visual thing, I started to try and build a narrative. And this is where you can see the Michel Gondry inspiration coming in. I sort of made this cardboard city and did some, sorry for the video quality here, but like a really simple stop motion sequences in these music videos. And it was all just a learning process, and I was really enjoying it. And then the fact that because I was making music videos, again, like just on a small scale and just for bands that unfortunately don't even exist anymore, but it felt so exciting to be doing something like this. And so I made more music videos, and as you'll see, like the paper art just started to get a bit more intricate, and I started to get a bit more ambitious with the ideas. And then I could just start to see and realize that there were so many ways I could take this, and I didn't know if I wanted to do more videos or something different. But then at the same time, this was when Instagram started to get big. So this is like 2015 or so. And this is when Instagram was also more photography based rather than video based as it is now. So I kind of got more interested into photography, and picking up a camera was the perfect excuse to go and explore London. And I started going around London, but with some of the paper cutouts and things that I've been making, and I'd sort of combined photography with paper, and I was doing stuff like this. And like, I was aware this wasn't like totally unique. I'd seen other people do things like this where they'd gone around cities and done illustrated landmarks and held them up on location. So I knew that this wasn't anything unique, but I was enjoying the process of this. It was also an excuse for me to go to parts of London I hadn't actually seen. And then one day I did this one with Tower Bridge on the right-hand side, and I'd run out of like enough paper to do the whole of Tower Bridge. And so I just sort of trimmed. I had to not trim off the ends because there wasn't any paper, but I sort of just had to do a little bit of Tower Bridge and leave those two sides because I didn't have enough paper. And it was kind of through this that I realized that I quite liked there on the right-hand side where I've circled, I quite liked how the paper led into the real bridge, even though it was totally out of focus. But I liked the interaction between the paper and the real landscape there. There was just something about that. And this was a complete mistake. This was just because I didn't have enough paper. That's why I drew it like that. But this kind of inspired me to think something. It didn't quite click at the time, but it was just something there. Like, I feel like there's potential for, you know, this forced perspective, but interacting in some way. And that's where the idea started to form. And then I took this holiday to Lisbon, and I just picked up these black paper cutouts, which I thought stood out more than the white paper with illustrations on. So again, this was just another moment where I was like, there's something here. I don't know what exactly, but something. And then when I came back to London, those two thoughts that I had of like combining paper to interact with the landscape and black paper cutouts, that's when something clicked. And so I went to Westminster Bridge one day, and I made this paper cutout of a watch with the watch bit missing, and I held it up in front of Big Ben and got this shot. And I mean, it's not a great shot. There's a little bit in the left-hand corner there where like you can see me. I've done some terrible Photoshop trying to get rid of it. I think it was street lamp or something. Things are a bit out of focus. It's a bit great. It's not like a photographer wouldn't call this a great photo, but in terms of a creative idea, I was like, there's definitely something here. And what was really funny is that I was like faffing around. It was windy, and obviously anyone who's been to Westminster Bridge will know it's full of tourists and it's busy. And I was feeling like a bit of an idiot, like trying to get this shot because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just playing around. And there was a father and daughter, his daughter, like kind of watching me, wondering what I was up to. And they came up to me and he said, what are you doing? And I showed him this photo. When I say he said, what are you doing? He didn't say it in an aggressive way. It wasn't like, what are you doing? He was like, just wondering what you're up to. And so I showed him the photo, and then him and his daughter were really impressed. And he said to me, you should do more. And I was just sort of experimenting. I hadn't really thought about doing anymore, but that was so encouraging that a stranger came up to me and just sort of said those 4 words. And it really encouraged me to go off and be like, all right, yeah, I should do some more. So I did. So I started thinking of more ideas I could do in London. And so this is with the old City Hall building. And it just started going from there. It's just like once I found that process of how I got to this idea of paper cutouts in the landscape, once I like realized that it all come together and I knew what I was doing, I really ran with it. And I just had these ideas kept coming. I was running around London during the weekends and evenings getting these shots. And then eventually, if I was going on holiday, I'd take some with me. And then slowly through Instagram, a few projects started to come in, started to get brand collaborations, specifically with tourism boards who they liked the idea that I could show off locations in different ways, ways that other photographers hadn't. And then that was all going really well. I was starting to travel more and more and more. And then, of course, like lockdown happened, so no one was traveling. And so I had this passion and which relied on me traveling. And I was like, what can I do when I'm stuck at home? So I then sort of downscaled everything. And instead of working with buildings and architecture and landscapes, I was working with things around the apartment at home and just playing with little ideas on a, miniature, much smaller basis. And honestly, this sort of kept me sane and gave me like a bit of a drive during lockdown, when a lot of people I know suffered from not having a drive or not knowing what to do with themselves. So weirdly, this sort of passion and hobby, not only did it turn into a job and a career, it kept me going during lockdown as well. I mean, I know this is all insane ideas and madness, but it was great to like be waking up during lockdown and to like, all right, today I'm going to do this in this part of the house or whatever. And then when we came out of lockdown, again, I could like travel, and obviously at first just in London. So I was doing shots around London and doing brand partnerships again, which was awesome. And I started, developing, evolving the ideas to include color in some ways. And there's more travel here. So this is Berlin. And then also started thinking about how to bring video into my ideas. So this is an idea I did in Bilbao in Spain. And it all started from those sort of little stop motion sets, but evolved to this. And of course, when I was doing the stop motion sets, I didn't realize it was going to evolve to this sort of stuff. And then opportunities came in through, as I say, like through Instagram and other places. So I started doing collaborations with talent. So this is Isaac, who plays Bran in Game of Thrones. So when in Leicester Square, they launched this Iron Throne that you can go and sit in. They did a press and PR day where he turned up and had 5 minutes with him to film that thing. And yeah, it's also just given me a chance to spend more time outside and just to like notice things and be more observant. And I've loved that process as well. It's just none of this I knew would lead to that when I started. Sorry, none of this when I started, I didn't know it was leading to this and all of these opportunities. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about some of the things I've learned in a moment, but I kind of also wanted to talk about the creative process because I think it's kind of fun with some of the things that I do. So a lot of the times I get asked, how do you come up with your ideas, and how do you see things in that way? So I'll explain a couple of examples that I've done. So a few years ago, I went to Rio on a project, and obviously one of the most famous landmarks there is this Christ the Redeemer statue. So I thought, right, I wanted to do an idea with this, but I didn't know where to start. So I was looking at this photo of Christ the Redeemer, and obviously he's got his arms outstretched, and I was like, okay, when in life do people have their arms outstretched? Because like that's where I'm going to start building an idea around. So I thought of cabin crew on airplanes when they're pointing to the fire exits. So I kind of thought, is there something I could do with that? And then how about, when someone's got bags of shopping and they've got their arms outstretched because they've got this heavy shopping. And then I thought of like a lollipop lady, or a weightlifter when holding up dumbbells. And then I kind of thought of a guy when he's so I couldn't find a stock photo that suited this idea properly, but like a guy when he's exaggerating how big the fish is that he caught. And then I had this idea of in Titanic when Jack and Rose are at the bow of the ship, and I thought, right, pop culture, that always works. People recognize pop culture. So that's the idea that I went with when I shot that one in Rio with Jack behind the building, behind the landmark. Here's another example. So this is a hotel in Edmonton in Canada, not such a famous landmark, but just like a really interesting piece of architecture. So to my eyes, I was like, I can do something with this, but I don't know what. So I was sort of thinking, all right, what does the building kind of look like? And I thought maybe with the shape, it could be a skateboarder, like as if it's jumping up a ramp. I didn't think it was like that clever. So then I thought maybe sort of shooting it from a slight perspective, you could get that shape of someone sort of shouting through a loudspeaker, a horn, or I just don't know what the word is for that thing. Anyway, that thing. But I didn't go with that idea because I thought the shape of that building was so unique, and I love the idea of an accordion and the way that an accordion pulls apart and together again. And so that's the idea I went for this one. And actually, it just seemed to like really fit perfectly when I had that idea. And when you get those moments when you have an idea and you surprise yourself with the idea, it's so exciting when you can surprise yourself with your own creativity, which I know sounds really arrogant, but it's also part of the thing that drives you on. Like when you found a passion is when you're excited by the ideas that are coming to you. Again, I'll sort of go into that a little bit in a moment with some of the things I've learned. But one more example with coming up with my ideas. This is the Neon Sign Museum in downtown Las Vegas. And yeah, it's this building actually used to be somewhere else on the strip, and then they moved it. And it's a really interesting shaped building. Those sort of flutes are on either side of it are really they really caught my eye. So I thought I could do something with those. So at first I thought of like the snout of a shark, like in the Jaws poster. And then I thought of like kittens' ears, the way that they're shaped really in a similar way. And then I thought of Marilyn's skirt and the way that in that film, in the way her skirt sort of floats up. And so that's the idea I went for that one. Again, sort of the pop culture stuff I really enjoyed doing because people tend to recognize it immediately. And yeah, it just kind of worked quite effectively with this building. So let me show you a little bit more. So I'm just going to come out of this and show you a little behind the scenes video I did with Microsoft. This was about 2 years ago, but it's a bit more of me explaining sort of what I do and a few things like that.
It is amazing I haven't had more accidents and just walked into things during this. It was never really a conscious thing to look at the world differently. It wasn't like I was really trying to see things, but it was just slowly just letting myself be playful and just mess around with ideas. And I love that because why not? Why not look at the world through a different lens and see things that you've never seen before? I mean, how exciting is that? I can remember sitting on I think it was just like 2015, sitting on the bus reading a newspaper about creators who are traveling the world and getting paid to do what they do and do what they love. And I was sitting there, stuck in traffic, like, how do I get from here to there? Like, what's the process? And I don't mean to make it sound so simple, but it is kind of just finding that thing that you're really into. Like, that's the first step, and that's the most important step, because speaking from my experience, it will take you into the directions you want to go if you really love it. So I started doing what I do with landmarks in London. So I was very much like, right, London, you think of Big Ben, you think of London Eye, Tower Bridge, and those were the places that I started with and coming up with ideas for. And then in the process of that, I was exploring London in a wider context. I was starting to notice things and look around in a way that I hadn't really before. This is one of the reasons why London's great, because you've got sort of old, slightly shoddy architecture there that's a bit dilapidated, and then you've got the brand new buildings over here, and you've got this real juxtaposition. And thank you. There was definitely coffee time. And so you become more observant in that process. If I get an idea, I'd start by doing this little dance on the spot. This is called Fire. It's it's kind of a bit like, those Jack in the Boxes when they spring up. And yeah, that kind of became my consistent thread, and still is from back when I started to now. If you give yourself the time and space, you'll notice new things and different things. And as a photographer, I mean, that's what every photographer should be doing anyway. So I hardly ever get ideas literally on the spot, but just walking past that foliage, that bit at the top looks like it could, if I added a colour of a tin of paint, could look like green paint rolling out. Then if you combine that with the papercraft and the ability to create these forced perspective illusions, it gets even more exciting because you start to see the possibilities. If something's interesting to you, give it a go. It doesn't necessarily need to be your job, but if you make it your hobby at least, I think it will give you so much happiness and fulfillment. So I'm really interested in...
So I'll just stop that there and go back to the PowerPoint. So, not from the beginning. So yeah, I just wanted to collate a few thoughts about some of the process I had and kind of what I learned along the way, and yeah, just sort of share some of the ups and some of the downs. Like Ed mentioned at the start, it's not all been totally positive, but yeah. So when I started, I had no idea where any of this would take me, and I think it's just important just to start. So I didn't worry that I didn't have any plan or focused goal or how I was going to turn it into a job or if I could make money from it or anything like that. I just enjoyed the papercraft and the idea of going out and coming up with ideas and shooting the ideas. I just enjoyed that process for what it was. I think that's like really important for anyone who wants to, like, if you're trying to find your hobby, it's important that you're doing it for the love of it. And like, sorry, if you're trying to find your passion, it's important that you're doing it for the love of it. If you're thinking about money, recognition, or anything like that, it's probably not the right thing for you. And you probably need to keep trying new things until you find something that you're just doing for the sake of doing it. I think a lot of people are like, I've got a relatively big Instagram audience, and a lot of people ask me about how to get a big Instagram audience, and it's like, that's the wrong question. The right question is, how do you find something that you love? Because that's then going to lead to all of these other things. So that was one thing. As soon as I found the thing that I loved doing, which for me was papercraft and photography, it was just starting it, just playing around with it, just messing around, not having any goal, not having any pressure to succeed with it or anything. I was just trying new things. And then you need to build the confidence to follow your own creativity in that process as well. Because like I said at the start, when I was looking at all these other paper artists doing incredible things, it was intimidating. Like, they were so, and they are so, like, intricate and amazing. And that's just not the skill set that I had. So I needed to find a way to, like, do something that was on a scale that I could do. And especially when as I say, I was working in TV at the time as well. So I was working on other people's ideas, and I really rarely had the confidence to ever, like, speak up and suggest my own ideas. So by starting with something simple as, like, making those paper those paper cardboard sets in my bedroom at home, it was an environment where I could slowly build my confidence. No pressure, no one telling me I was doing anything wrong, and also no audience that I had to show anything to until I was ready to show something to. So build an environment where you can slowly build your own confidence. And the irony is that, like I say, I was working in TV and working on other people's ideas. Last year, I shot something for a TV channel in Germany where I was directing a small crew, and we were going around West Germany shooting things. So it's kind of funny when things go full circle. And like, the deeper into, like, a hobby or a passion or something like that that you do have, you will notice there are these moments where, kind of things go full circle. It's quite satisfying. A really important thing I learned along the way is let the mistakes happen. I think it's really important to not punish mistakes and not punish your own mistakes as well. There are so many times when ideas didn't work for me, or they didn't look as good as I'd hoped. I'll go out and shoot them, and I put all this effort into going out, for a sunrise shoot, and then it just didn't work. And it's easy to be despondent, but it also made me tenacious. It made me want to be better and improve and find opportunities to come up with ideas that could work. So don't worry about the mistakes and just accept that they will happen. And quite often, when something doesn't go to plan, that's when you're forced to have to figure out a spontaneous solution on the spot. And it really tests your creativity, and it actually can lead to unexpected ideas, and sometimes, like, ideas which are better than the original idea that you had. And again, as I was saying, that's when you kind of surprise yourself with your own creativity, and that's a really motivating factor. So embrace the mistakes, just know that they will happen, but also luck appears quite often just when you need it to. So I'm a big believer in the whole concept of, meeting the universe halfway. But yeah, don't expect everything to go perfectly to plan. It won't. And just embrace those mistakes. It's all part of the process. Also accept that you will doubt yourself at various stages during the process of trying to, figure out your hobby, or trying to build your hobby into something more than just a hobby. So whenever someone does give you encouragement and support, really listen to it and appreciate it, because, as I say, there'll be times when you don't give yourself the encouragement and support that you do need. If I'd said to myself at the start of all this that I want to make a living from this, I want to make money from this, I want to quit my job and do this, I would have persuaded myself that it was so stupid and so ambitious I would never have done it in the first place. So again, another reason why it has to be a passion, but just accept there will be times when you doubt yourself and just persevere with that. And then, unfortunately, accept that others will doubt you as well. It sucks, but people might tell you that what you're doing is dumb, impossible, there's no way you could ever make a living from that. You won't get anywhere doing that. You're wasting your time. That will happen, and it will sting when it does happen. There are so many times when it's happened, and basically, the moment you start to have some success with what you're doing is also the moment when like trolls and haters will appear. But know that if you do have trolls, it probably means that you're at that level of success where things start to happen. So, in a way, take courage that you have trolls. Obviously, if everyone is trolling you, you're probably doing something wrong. So listen to that feedback, but just accept there will be people who, unfortunately, do doubt you, don't like what you do. And that's fine. That's, again, part of the process. And it also means that it's so important, again, to listen to those that do support you. So your friends, your family, or whatever. The people who do give you encouragement, you will really want to hold on to some of that. As I said, that man and his daughter on Westminster Bridge, back when I was taking that Big Ben photo, I can't tell you how much of a big deal it was that strangers came up to me and said, oh, you should do more photos like this. It was such a small thing for him to say, but a big encouragement for me. So really soak up any enthusiasm that you get from anyone who's supporting you, doing what you do. And then also at the same time, if you've got friends who are doing, interesting hobbies or trying to build a hobby, like throw them compliments, man, throw them encouragement, because it's amazing how, as I say, those 4 words that guy said to me on Westminster Bridge, that really encouraged me to keep going. So if you can give someone else that gift, that's amazing. Inevitably, you're going to feel stuck as well, like trying to come up with ideas or trying to figure out even at the very start, trying to figure out what your passion or your hobby is. So my advice there is, don't be afraid to imitate. So like a musician doesn't go straight into writing their own hit song. They learn other people's songs first, right? They learn all the chords to Wonderwall or whatever first, and perfect how to play that until they start to figure out their own style and their own voice. So likewise, if you want to write something but don't know where to start, then write fan fiction based on your favorite character or your favorite show or your favorite book or whatever. That's exactly what I did with that Cardboard City idea I mentioned, with Michel Gondry's Science of Sleep scene on the left. And that's my scene on the right, which I don't mind admitting, I basically stole from that, but let's call it imitate. I basically imitated from that. But if you need that as a springboard to start, then use it, because it's so helpful. And it's much better to be doing something than nothing, or just being like, all right, no, that's been done. What else can I do? Because everything's been done. It's just, you're going to have to start doing something that's been done and putting your own twist on it. And it's all okay if it all feels a bit silly. That's fine. I often worried that while my friends were doing really well in their jobs and I wasn't doing so well in mine, I was, as I said, at a really junior level in my TV job. And I sort of found myself spending more and more time playing around with paper and running around London with cutouts and getting these shots. It kind of felt silly. I don't mind admitting that, and it still kind of does in some way, but I was and I am excited about doing it. That's it's the thing that really excites me and gets me passionate, and it's the only thing that will make me jump out of bed first thing in the morning to go off and shoot a sunrise at 5 a.m. or something. Nothing else would get me up that early in the morning. So it's okay that it feels a bit silly or preposterous or anything like that. If it's getting you fired up and you're loving it, then keep going. Not everyone gets the opportunity to find something they love. So if you do, then that's such a privilege. So yeah, run with it if you do get that. And the other thing is, eventually it somehow comes together. Don't worry about the path, especially when you start. I think I could have easily have got caught up and worried about, how is this going to work? Is this going to find an audience? Is this going to make me money? Can I leave my job and do this? Don't worry about the rewards or the results or anything like that. Just embrace it. You just need to do that first couple of steps of making things, trying things, and then figuring it out along the way. That's absolutely the most important thing when it comes to trying to figure out a hobby or a passion. And I think in the world of social media, when so many people are bragging about, their passions and where it's taken them and where it's got them to, I mean, it's amazing that we do live in a world now where social media can, you can build a career on social media. But yeah, it has to be something that you absolutely love doing, because there's a ton of hard work that goes on behind the scenes in what anyone does who's built a platform on social media. So, and the only way they're doing it is by spending all those hours because they love it. So yeah, try and find something that you love doing and just make that first step. So yeah, that's my Instagram handle if you want to come and check out some of the other things I've been doing. And sorry, yeah, I kind of rattled through that quite quickly, but Ed, I don't know if you want to ask me any more questions or question me on anything I said there.
Oh, I'm now back. I'm back in the room, Rich. That was so good. I've seen you when we were at a conference, a filmmaking conference before together. I've seen you do something similar, but seeing it a second time and seeing a journey again is super inspirational for me. I love everything you've said about kind of social media as well, and from a, I think often we talk about social media in schools and education, we talk about it as, you know, looking after mental health and not everything's real and all this, and you're coming at it from a completely different angle of like creativity and a platform to connect with others that are doing creative stuff. And crucially there, you know, do what you love. And, you know, that question you said you got asked about, how do I grow on social media? That's not the question at all. As you said, it should be about what do you love doing? What can you put into the world that's good? And it's really also reassuring to know, I think sometimes we look at people who are like yourself doing now what you love doing for your job, and we just see the finished product without realizing that you're spending hours and hours and hours and working way more than you would in a normal job that pays you a steady income.
That's so true. I've never worked so hard. I mean, you know, I guess I'm sort of, you know, self-employed, so to speak. So I think a lot of self-employed people would say they've never had to work so hard in order to get it off the ground and running. And honestly, the only way I would have found that energy is by doing something that I love. I would never have been able to find that energy if my sole ambition was just to make money. Even then, I wouldn't have done this, because yeah, if I look back at all of the hours and like honestly like the sacrifices I've had to make as well along the way, it's only because I love doing this. Yeah
100%. And I loved what you said about, you know, creativity and looking silly as well, and not worrying about what you appear like. And I remember when I was teaching, I used to say to my students who would look at celebrities or people on social media or artists, you know, and they would always say, oh, they've got this and they've got that. And I said, why is the reason they stand out? The reason they generally stand out is because they're doing something that no one's done before, or they're doing it in a different way, or, you know, and I think young people always want to, and actually all of us want to be accepted for who we are, but sometimes it's going out of your way and doing something different, something against the grain, you know, like you were saying, trying new things. And also what's really interesting, you said about, you know, imitating, and that's okay. And we're often taught that actually don't copy and don't do this, but if you do, like you said, take inspiration and imitate in a slightly different way, lots of artists I know, as long as you give them credit, get inspired themselves from that, or feel great about the fact they've inspired someone else. So don't be afraid to try new things, and then it leads to a new path like it has done for you. We had one question, I think we kind of answered it, definitely like what's, you know, been some of the mistakes you've made. You talked about that, but this bit here, just to end on, because we've got 1 or 2 minutes, what would be your advice to a teenager who's 13 or so years old, that is also feeling like that they have a calling for creativity but don't know where to start, or feel that they're too young to be able to make a difference? Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, well, I can try and muddle one together. Yeah, for sure. I think curiosity is the key here. So anything that you are interested in, like anything that you spend your time, like consider what it is that you spend your time looking at and doing, because those are the things you're curious about. Or if you're not sure if there's, you know, if you're not sure what that is, then try and explore a few different things and figure out what it is that catches your eye. And if there's something that connects all of it, so maybe the theme is music, or there's like costume design, or it's just at that stage, I think just try a ton of things. I remember when I was exactly around that age, my hobbies kept changing every week or two. And I was really worried that I wasn't finding something that I loved, because I kept just like I was into tennis one week, and then the next week I wanted to be a chef, and then I wanted to be a magician, and I never really like stuck with anything. And I was really worried because a lot of my friends were, you know, finding their thing and getting quite good with it, and I felt like I was getting left behind. But actually, I'm really glad that I went through all those different things until I eventually found what it is that I did love to do. Because had I stuck with something that I didn't love, then I don't know where I would have ended up. I certainly wouldn't. I don't think I'd be doing like the exciting things I get to do now. So going back to that question, I think it's just staying curious and trying a ton of different things until you find something that works. And in terms of like that question about making a difference, again, I'd try and put that at the back of your mind for the moment. The important thing for now is just trying to find something and start making things, start doing things. The purpose, the results, all of that comes later. That will kind of figure itself out. As I say, the key is the passion. Like there's none of this will work if you don't have the passion at the start. So focus on finding that thing that really gets you excited, that really like you feel like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And that kind of starts with just being open-minded and curious and trying a lot of different things. And it's okay if some things don't work, or, you know, some things like are terrible and some things are good. Like, explore them all.
Amazing. What a way to finish off. And I love how you talked about curiosity, because it is the precursor for like developing empathy as well. And what way to finish that creative session. Rich, thank you so much. Like you said there, you can see his Instagram, PaperBoyo. Please go, you'll lose yourself. I sometimes just scroll through all the amazing stuff Rich has done, get inspiration as well. So do go and take a look, reach out to Rich as well. And just to say thank you all for being here, and hope to see you on some more sessions. Thanks, Rich.
Cheers for having me. Cheers.